Well, welcome back to Two Pastors and a Mic. My name is Shannick.
And I'm Corey.
And we're so thankful that you're joining us today. And have we got a word to get into? But before we do that, I want to say thank you for all of you who have left a review. We're so thankful to get those, to receive those, and to get some affirmation for what we're doing. Those of you that have started watching us, I guess on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us as well. It's a little bit different. I'm just going to be, so last week we talked a little bit about the difference between vulnerability and transparency. And I'm just going to be a little bit vulnerable to say, last week I was not digging the video element of our podcast. Like the angle that this was shot in and everything, I felt a little chubby, to say the least. And I'm going to be honest, you sent me 2 videos for me to post as promos, and I only posted one of the 2 because I felt, I don't know if it was shame or what, but hey, we're just going right into it today. It's all right. Let's keep going.
If you were paying attention to Shannick's post, I specifically commented on your post because I know you shared that with me, and I just talked about how great your hair looks.
Your hair looks amazing.
So if you are watching us or you're seeing this on TikTok or anywhere, Instagram, let's comment on how beautiful Shannick looks.
Let's not do that.
You could also comment on how beautiful I look because I just got back from Florida. And
you are sun-kissed.
Got a nice little tan. Not as bad as my daughter, but parenting fail. But
anyways, leave a review, rate us.
We appreciate all of your support. In fact, last week was our second most listened to week in the history of our podcast, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know who's listening and how this momentum is happening, but
I think on Thursday was the most listened ever in the history of our podcast in one single day, which I was like, who is listening to us? Holla at your boy. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we do appreciate it. So question of the week, we are the week of the Final Four. The national championship, next Monday.
Mm-hmm. What a ride this Final Four.
Yeah, March Madness has truly lived up to the name and
every year it lives up to its name, but this year it's kind of special.
Crazy.
I think the first time ever a number 1 seed did not make the Elite Eight. We have a 9 seed, 2 5s, and a 4 in the Final Four.
Yeah.
It is crazy.
I love it for the smaller schools. Like, what is it, FAU? Who's in it?
FAU.
I mean, I'm always going to be rooting for an underdog, so I'll just keep rooting for them.
Heck yeah.
I actually found out just this past week, too, that their coach actually was a team manager under Bobby Knight at Indiana, which, of course.
Sean was telling me all about this past week as I was spending some time with him.
So, absolutely, I'm for FAU and Miami, and they beat Indiana this year, and Indiana had the makeup of having a run in the tournament, like kind of a special team this year, a better team than we've had in decades, almost maybe a decade. And Miami took us out, man. Their guards are quick, athletic.
I hate them.
Could shoot, and their point guard actually is an Indiana boy too.
Yeah, Miami looks great. UConn looks incredible, and I don't know if you paid attention to a couple weeks ago when I gave the statistics of who to pick for.
Yeah.
If you picked UConn and listened to my advice, even though there were 6 other teams you could have picked, you'd be looking pretty good because UConn looks fantastic.
Yeah, they look super good.
Who are you picking to win it all?
Well, I'm going to root for the underdog.
FAU? I'll go FAU or UConn. Either of those 2.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm going to be mad if Miami wins because they're the team that took Indiana out. So, I'm going to go... Yeah, in that order, FAU and then UConn.
Yeah, so I was watching. Obviously, if you know me, I'm a big Michigan State fan. We surpassed expectations. Didn't have a great team, but we were dogs, man. And we were playing against Kansas State, and that dog, Noel, man, he dominated us single-handedly. Without him, I think we win by 15 in that specific game, just with how well Michigan State shot. What a game of the tournament.
Yeah. I think the game of the tournament.
I was devastated for a lot longer than I wanted to admit. But he was just amazing. 1 minute left in overtime. I don't know if you saw this. You know the play when he's arguing with the coach and then throws the lob, reverse dunk. I don't know if you saw what happened.
I think it's the first play that they had the ball in overtime, wasn't it?
It was a minute left.
A minute left?
Left. A tie ball game at 92 to go up to. But did you see by chance what he said while he was dribbling up the court?
Well, just from the highlights afterward, I saw the play, but I didn't see what he said. He did say, watch this, I think, to Isaiah Thomas and some other...
Mateen Cleaves.
Yeah.
So after I watched the post game, he was speaking to Mateen Cleaves because they had been going back and forth during the game because he's sitting right there close to courtside, which Isaiah Thomas was right next to him, and some Mo Pete and other guys. Yeah, dribbling up the court. Watch this. What, can I just say that was so ballsy? Going up and then doing that lob as soon
and
as that
saying it
happened.
to two of the greatest college point guards of all time.
Of all time. Oh, my goodness. And then
Man.
I was devastated. But then I was cheering for Kansas State because I was like, I can't believe that guy hit the assist record, dominated us, and then they fell
So
short.
as you can tell, we love basketball, and specifically, we do love March Madness.
I love March Madness. And then we're going to be done after this. The FDU, the team who beat Purdue, shout out to all our Purdue grads. My wife is one of you, and she didn't actually care. But this is what I love the most about March Madness. That FDU coach, I think his name was Tobin Anderson, who beat the number 1 seed at FDU, which is Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey. If you look all those pictures of their home gym, it's like a high school gym. In fact, Indiana's schools here that have sectionals are bigger gyms than this college program. What I love the most is, do you know how much money his salary was as FDU's coach? Because I looked this up.
I don't know.
Me and
If
John
I'm
were
going to
talking
have
about
to guess, I'm going to say $158,000
Yeah, that's a pretty
a year.
pretty good guess. $40,000.
Wow.
$40,000 to coach FDU. He beats the number 1 team, and did you hear he signed a 5-year contract with Iona?
Because Rick Pitino left
went
to
to
go
St.
to St. John.
Which is amazing, though. They didn't disclose. I don't, at the recording of this podcast, I don't know how much it is, but his salary increased significantly to continue to do what he was already doing. That's one of the biggest reasons why I love March Madness. You look back over Dunk City, Florida Gulf Coast University 10 years ago, which, by the way, that coach is now the coach of, I can't even remember, but he was coaching because he took Florida Gulf to the Sweet 16. He gets a big coach.
And for those of you that think we're just talking about athletics and sports and the game, really this makes a difference for the universities and the education that they can provide. There was some statistic, and I can't recall it right off the top of my head, but some of these schools in basketball that go on deep runs, like these smaller schools, the impact that it has for the university as a whole. I remember one school, and I don't know if it was Florida Gulf Coast or a different one, like their enrollment increased by over 100% the following year. Like that means they doubled, which is insane. I know Butler in Indianapolis, when they went on that back-to-back national title run, when they lost in the finals, I think both years. I can't remember the all-star, the great player on the team. He's still playing in the league today.
Who? I wasn't listening.
For Butler University back in the day.
Gordon Hayward.
So that university, a few years after, was able to increase enrollment, raise revenue, that they invested like $39 million that they just paid like cash for to upgrade not just the gymnasium facility, but like dorms, university as a whole. Like it's a big deal for smaller universities.
So, and ran about March Madness. You can tell we love sports. I love March Madness. It's one of my favorite things of the year. In fact, that first weekend, Thursday and Friday, is like Christmas morning for me. I love it. It's my favorite 2 days of the year. But March Madness.
All right. So I said earlier that we have a word for you today. If you've been with us the last 4 weeks, what we've been doing is just unpacking these words that may be rare, but they're very relevant in our life and things that we've been sitting in, processing through, and today is no different. It's a word where, as I was thinking about how maybe cynical I've become, and you'll hear a bit more about that later, I knew it wasn't quite cynicism. So I was doing just some research around cynicism and what this might mean and what it looks like, what are the symptoms. I came across a different word, and I shared this with you right before you left for vacation, and you were like, that's it, we got to talk about it. So why don't you tell them what the word is and unpack that just for a little bit.
The word is Decathect. 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 I just felt like I was in a spelling bee.
No.
Now use it in a sentence. It's to withdraw one's feelings of attachment from either a person, an idea, or an object as in anticipation of a future loss. And oftentimes you can learn a lot about a word by its antonym. So the antonym obviously is cathect, and that means to become emotionally invested in or attached to. And so obviously this is a great word, decathect, to explain not just where we've been over the last several years. We've kind of had you actually shared, which we're going to share here in a moment, a moment of revelation about conquering cynicism. so to speak, because especially in pastoral ministry, it's very easy to withdraw when you've been hurt by certain people or hurt by certain situations or circumstances. And yeah, I don't know how much we want to share right now. Or are you just going to
No,
go
that's
right
okay.
into
Let
it?
me just go right into
Yeah.
it. So basically, what this word is detachment from people, like you said, for fear of future loss.
Yeah.
So most of the time, this word is most commonly used when someone's about to pass away. To help with our emotions, to help with our thought life, we will detach as to not be so close to the situation and to death. And we think that's a protective mechanism for us to not feel as much hurt or pain or go through as much trauma. So we detach from someone in anticipation from a future loss. And of course that works when someone's going through the process of dying, but it also plays out when we have been hurt or when we've went through I'll say traumatic experiences where people have said stuff or have done stuff to hurt us. And then because of those traumas, then new relationships, this is where this word ties in. We don't go through the process of attaching or forming new relationships because we think the new relationships will end just like past relationships did in our life. And so for me as a pastor, and if you're following along, maybe you can see how this has played out in your life, maybe with a new set of friends or a new work situation, and maybe because of what's happened at a previous workplace or in family or with a previous friend, and they've done something to betray or to hurt. You don't want to get attached to anything new for fear of that hurt or to go through the trauma again. And so I know for me, and I'll just start, we'll just see where this goes, but I recognize over the last few years, especially since COVID, right? COVID was this time where we had to slow down, we had to process, just really going through the grief work of doing things different and operating different, and our life wasn't going to be the same as pastors in ministry. Going through that season, I also felt it was a growth season, but there were also some negative and some traumas that came with that. And one of those being when we kind of started coming back into services, we noticed that there were certain people just not with us anymore. And then recognizing that some of those people were super involved, super invested. So it's not like they were just on the peripheral and they just kind of faded away. Like they were in the core of my relationships, and then they were just no longer there. And then come to find out that there was just some hurtful things that were said about me, how I lead, how I pastor, that they didn't align with or agree with, and so they wanted to move on. And I don't want to sit here and think that I have it all together, that I know the perfect way to minister, that I have it, down pat on how to pastor at 100% capacity all the time, because I don't. I'm not perfect, and I realize that, and honestly, I'm okay with that. But it still hurts when people leave or when people say things against you, whether it's your style specifically. They might attack what you've said, and then how you lead, and they're no longer there. So I know over the last couple of years, I've found myself, when new people come into Hill City, I love that new people are coming in. I love that they're embracing the message, our culture of acceptance and grace and love. But at the same time, I found myself, I think, a little reserved, because I'm not wanting to attach for fear of that future loss. Well, they're only going to be here 3 months, and then they're going to find something that they hate or disagree with, and they'll be gone. So why invest emotionally in them? So I've noticed I've detached so much so that I actually had to come to you with this. There was a few month period where there were some Sundays I would come in to worship, and I think I'm an extrovert, and people energize me. So that's why I think that I'm an extrovert. But I found myself a lot of Sundays there for a 3 to 6 month period. I would actually increase it to that. Just kind of hiding out in my office. Like there's all these new people coming in, and I mean, I'm going to minister to them and I'm going to be there for them and help them any way that I can, but I'm just not going to get attached anymore. I'm not going to emotionally fully put myself out there and invest in that relationship, because in 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years, they're going to be gone. So what's the point? So I was in this season, like I said, for months going through, and then I found this word, Decathect, and it's like, this is exactly it. I'm not attaching to people like I should be for fear or anticipation of a future loss.
Hmm.
And so that's what I've been sitting in for a while now.
Yeah. Dude, thanks for sharing that. That's a lot. Seriously.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you for doing that, because, which we're going to come back to, this revolving door revelation that you shared with me in the process of it. Because although I would say I'm in a very similar boat with you, I think we've been processing out of that boat together, because I think it's a fair place to be. And sometimes you can look at a word like this and be like, oh, you shouldn't be acting that way. You shouldn't be fearful of that way. Obviously, you shouldn't be. But if we don't give people permission to live in that headspace for however long you need to live in that headspace, then you don't actually overcome it. You just sweep it under the rug, and then it comes out in sideways types of ways in the future. And so I'm proud of you for that. But two, like, I relate with that so much. And it's not even, what hurt me the most wasn't the people leaving. What hurt me the most were the people leaving that said that they felt loved and really enjoyed their time at the church. Because that's bizarre. Because then I don't know. You used to ask people all the time the question of, well, when you were part of Hill City, did you feel loved from our church and from me specifically as a leader? And there wasn't one person that you asked that said no. And so then it's like, well, then I love that you told one family, then I served you well as your pastor for this season.
Yeah.
And
the question specifically was, has there ever been a time that we didn't love you well?
Yeah.
Just to hear if there were situations or encounters or something that would come up. And almost, I think actually every single time I asked that question to people who have left or made the decision to leave, they were like, actually, no, we have felt loved the whole time. And then, with one family, I said, well, I did what I was commanded to do in following Jesus. So.
Yeah. And so it can be hard. Church ministry can be super hard. We're not don't have a pity party for us. We're moving past this. But honestly, there were some episodes a couple of years ago that we talked about cynicism. Actually, I'm going to look this up real quick because it was a really good episode. But I went back and listened to it, and I was like, man, I know me pretty well, and my tone is still a little bit bitter, still a little bit hurt, honestly, from that. It was episode 7. One of our first episodes,
wow.
Dealing with criticism. Then episode 8, Get the Funk Out.
I remember that one.
Yeah, we were talking about that. And then episode 9, To Hell with Your Labels. And so it was like 3 episodes in a row. We were currently in hurt from people leaving, and they're really good episodes. But I listened back to them recently, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, I'm still hurting, and you need to allow yourself some time to get over it, so to speak. And 2 years later, I feel like I'm finally coming out of it. But it really was because of a conversation you and I had in December about this revolving door. And I'd actually really appreciate it if you shared it, even if it's a little bit too vulnerable.
No, it's not vulnerable at all, because it's really helped me. I really do believe it was from the Spirit, just showing and illuminating and giving me fresh perspective of our ministry, where I'm at as pastor. And basically what it is, like you just said, was a revolving door is what I kept seeing. And as a pastor, when you go to retreats or conferences to help you minister and to help grow your church, there was a trend for about 5 to 8 years that all these conferences and retreats to help pastors grow their church, they talked about closing the back door of the church. And basically what that means is people will come in, people will visit, people will be attracted. They'll come in, and some of them might stay 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, whatever. But eventually, if you don't do something to close that back door, eventually they're going to be gone. Mm-hmm. And so as I was thinking about that, why is it such a bad thing that some people do come and go? And I just began to get this picture of a revolving door, in that when people come in through the doors at Hill City, I want them to experience Jesus in a way that maybe they've never experienced it before. And I think that for us, and for me specifically as the lead pastor of this place, my number one priority is creating, I'll say, the atmosphere or the experience for them to do that. And it's done in a culture of love. And I feel like whether someone comes and they're here for 2 weeks and they don't quite vibe with it, or they come a few months or a few years, whatever that is, I have to look at it differently, in that I might only see some people for 2 weeks, but I need to love them well the time that they're here.
Hmm.
We can deposit seeds, right? That's really, as pastors, that's what we do. We shepherd, and then we plant seeds, and we help water those seeds. And sometimes people are in our life or in our ministry for just a couple of months or just a couple of years. And sometimes I don't know what's going to happen or how that's going to take place in producing fruit in their life, maybe decades later. And I got to be okay with them coming in. They're going to be loved well while they're here. And if they choose to leave right out the door of that revolving door, I got to be okay with that.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily that something changes to keep them, so to speak. It's us being okay if people decide to come and then leave for whatever reason. And so it's really addressing the hurt and walls that we as leaders can consciously or even subconsciously put up to protect ourselves from the pain of people leaving. But in other words, it's about becoming a unsticky church, because there's actually a really famous church book called Sticky Church.
I have one.
I know. That's why I said it.
Okay.
I've read it because you read it. And it's like this idea of like how to make your church sticky. And it's almost like, well, if we're actually doing the calling of God and living in the kingdom of God, then it's not about getting people to stick to our version of church. It's about raising people up, whether that is at a couple weeks or months or years at a time, and releasing them and giving them that verbiage and that freedom to, hey, if this isn't where you feel like is your tribe, so to speak, even though I hate that language, then we want to help you find that tribe elsewhere, and not just say that and be hurt, but say that because we actually mean it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we, as the fivefold ministry gifts, like pastors, teachers, evangelists, apostles, and prophets, if our job is to equip, then wouldn't we see it as a success in equipping people? If they come in, they get what they need, they get equipped, they get encouraged, and then they're empowered to go out and live as the church 24/7, and maybe we never see them again. Why wouldn't we celebrate that?
Yeah.
Instead of being hurt by that.
And so that's what you said when you were sharing that. And it helped me get out of the boat of cynicism. Now I still battle with some things around that, and I still have to overcome some of those negative thoughts that I have. But when you share that in December, it's now March, I remember being so encouraged and then processing that for the last 3 months, even though I'm still processing it. It was a really encouraging word that helped me overcome Decathect, so to speak, in my life. And not saying that I'll never experience Decathect again, but it gave me a perspective and a hope to recognize that even if I only have a month with people, I'm going to give them the best version of Jesus that I have.
Yep.
And it was really freeing for me. And, you know, people leave because of issues of gray. Let's call them issues of gray. So many times in the church, we want issues to be black and white. And we think that many things in the Bible are black and white. But I was having a conversation with my roommates recently. I wonder if God is more concerned about us living in the gray and loving in the gray, because it's really easy to find your tribe when you make things black and white. It's really easy to love people when they agree with your black and white. But how difficult is it to not have answers? Because one of my roommates was saying, I wish God was way more clear on this subject. And I was like, well, maybe he wasn't clear on purpose. Because it's more challenging to love someone like Jesus when you disagree on a topic. And so maybe we should embrace the gray way more. Maybe 50 Shades of Gray was more prophetic for the church than we ought to have been.
I love that. And I love that. Embrace the gray.
Embrace the gray.
Yeah.
And so, and I want to close with this. If you're struggling with what you believe and why, struggling with Decathect, struggling with all the things that is so common in the church, there's this really famous phrase called fake it till you make it. I hate the phrase. I want to switch the phrase, and we've talked about it before on this podcast, but what if being faithful to what you're doing now in the midst of not knowing what you believe or in the midst of feeling the pain from people is more important? And that's what, it's not fake it till you make it. What if it's being faithful till you make it? And I know I've shared this before. There's that Katy Perry documentary. It came out like 8 years ago, right? When she was dating that dude with long hair that's very political, the Great Britain dude, or maybe he's Australian dude, and I just offended a whole bunch of Europeans. I can't remember what his name is.
He's in Bedtime Stories with Adam Sandler. I know the dude. I just can't think of his name.
Anyways, they went through a public breakup because they were dating. And I remember on the documentary, Katy Perry's getting ready to perform in front of a sold out arena, and she's underneath the stage and it's about to pop up and she's crying. And the behind the scenes of the actual show was showing her like standing in this elevator, and the guy's getting ready to press the button and she's crying, and he like waits 30 seconds and like the time passes that she's supposed to be up, and all of a sudden she pulls herself together, wipes her tears, and is like, I'm ready. And the guy hits the button and she shoots up and she performs for the next 90 minutes in front of a sold out crowd. And I remember watching that and thinking, oh my goodness, you could look at what she did and said, oh, she just faked it till she made it. But what if she understood the principle of faithfulness until you make it? Those people didn't care about her personal life. They bought tickets because they wanted to see her perform for 90 minutes. And so she was faithful to the assignment in the midst of her personal pain. And I wonder if that could be a testimony of our lives. Okay, sure, you might not know what you believe about faith. Sure, you're dealing with heartbreak. Sure, you've got real life pain and chaos. And we talked about sitting in the well, and I believe in that. But what if you could still be faithful in the midst of not knowing all of those things? And that's what we wanted to leave you with. If you're being cynical towards something, you have permission to be cynical towards that thing. And it's not faking it till you make it. What if it was being faithful? So I want to encourage you, if you are being cynical towards something, that's okay. You have time and space for that. Process through that. But I really want to challenge you around this idea of allowing the Spirit to minister to you in however the Spirit needs to minister to you, to remove Decathect from your life so that you can minister in love every single day.
Man, Corey, that was so good. So good. Appreciate you sharing that. And if you felt like this podcast episode was encouraging, or maybe you feel like someone else in your life could really benefit from this conversation, why don't you go ahead and share this podcast with them? And then don't just share it with them, have a follow-up conversation with them. Maybe it'll help both of you process this idea of Decathect.
And go leave a review if you haven't done that. We share it at the beginning, but then some of you ignore because you forget because the episodes are so dang good. That was sarcasm.
Oh, I know. It's all good. Just know you're loved and there's nothing you can do about it.